Okay, so one thing I really do try to do is when I'm wrong, eat my words. A year ago, I said that the only quarterback that could save West Virginia football was Nico Marchiol. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of the state of Arizona, and I thought he was much better than Garrett Greene. I didn't think Greene had much of a ceiling, I didn't think he had the it factor, I just didn't think he was all that good. Well, Garrett Greene completely proved me wrong. He became one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 last year, became one of the most feisty quarterbacks in all of college football, and now going into 2024, has West Virginia football surging, could be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, and honestly is going completely under the radar. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to Garrett Greene. Just like me, everybody has always been underrating him, as he was just a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. Many of the big-time programs didn't think he was good enough or tall enough to play quarterback for them, and also everyone was ready to replace him at West Virginia. Now he is the guy in the program, and in my opinion, could be the best quarterback West Virginia's had since Will Grier. Today we're going to meet him and talk about his journey and what his potential is. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Garrett Greene. In order to understand Garrett Greene, we first need to go back in time. His dad, Charlie, played several years in the major leagues and even helped coach. He played for the Mets, Orioles, Brewers, and Blue Jays, and going even further back than that, his grandpa was also a sensational player in the 1960s as well as a football player. He was an All-American at Wingate College, and from there, he grew up loving baseball. He grew up going to different clubs, playing in different leagues, and with all those athletic traits, it was not surprising he was going to become a baseball phenom while he grew up in the city of Tallahassee. He was a hard-hitting catcher who had a great motor and was viewed as a potential D1 baseball player and an MLB draft pick. Greene did not play his first football game until he was in 7th grade, but his love for the gridiron eventually won out over baseball. That's been the case since the spring of 8th grade, when he would convince his dad to sign him up for training in a quarterback camp in Mobile, Alabama, which was about 3 hours away. His trainer said, quote, "You could tell back then that Garrett had the arm talent, but he was kind of this baseball kid who knew he had some catching up to do in other areas. Part of what he loved about football was the temper. He'll always find a new reason to trash talk, and he could never embrace being an even keel, tampered down sort of player. The fire inside of him was essential, and if that was muted, it would minimize him. He said, quote, "Being undersized, you have to be fiery and you have to be energetic." At the time, he was generously listed at 6 foot, and that's the reason why many schools really weren't all that high on him. He went to Lawton Childs High School in Tallahassee and was initially a running back because of his wheels, but when the team was struggling in his sophomore year, he got an opportunity to play quarterback. He said to his coach, quote, "We had gone 10 quarters without a touchdown, and I said, come on now, we've got to move the ball. I told him if I'm not going to play quarterback, then I'm just going to go play baseball because I know I can get drafted or go D1. Eventually, he'd make the quarterback switch in week 3, and the move would immediately backfire. Greene's first 2 passes were intercepted, but luckily this was the low point of his football career. Childs went 6-2 the rest of the way, and then figured it out on the recruiting trail. One of the first schools that expressed belief in him was Troy University. They're located in Mobile, Alabama, and at the time, Neil Brown was the head coach. Troy was also in a really good spot as a program, so when Brown was rumored for several Power 5 jobs, he assured Greene that whatever job arose, the offer would stand. Greene said, quote, "Coach Brown told me, I'm not just recruiting you because I'm at Troy. He said you're going to be my guy regardless of what school he went to." At the time, he modeled his game after a certain player. It was Baker Mayfield. Not just because of his cocky, cool persona, but for that stick-it-to-the-non-believers attitude. He said, quote, "Baker's always been a second-tier guy and wasn't highly recruited. And even when there's no outside noise, he creates some in order to get his teammates fighting that much harder." Eventually, as he took over as a starter, he threw for 1,200 yards with 12 touchdowns, as well as running for 865 yards and 8 scores as a junior. Before his senior season, he ended up yelling a profanity at a baseball umpire as he apparently called him out when he knew he was safe. It could have carried a suspension, but luckily everything got sorted out, and when Neil Brown found out about this, he just told Greene to watch his mouth. But before putting it all away, he remembers that a video surfaced and it showed that he was safe, which proved that Garrett was right. Still though, he had a temper. Greene's final year in high school was a success as he threw for 1,200 yards with 7 touchdowns and also ran for 930 yards and 15 scores. Because he was under 6 foot, he was only a 3-star player. Florida State would ignore him for several years, even though he was just a couple miles away. Luckily, he got a couple of offers from SEC schools, though, as he'd end up getting offers from TCU, Georgia Tech, West Virginia, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Not only was he accomplished on the football field, but as I said, he was a standout on the baseball diamond, and he had a strong interest in playing both sports at the next level. Eventually, his loyalty to head coach Neil Brown won out, and he would choose to commit to the West Virginia Mountaineers. At the time of his commitment, this was huge, as it gave West Virginia another quarterback pledge right out of the gate, and this is something that the previous staff of Dana Holgorsen really struggled to do. It was a lot of JUCO and transfer players instead of actually recruiting their guys coming out of high school. As he was one of Brown's first commits here at West Virginia, he always captured the attention of the head coach back in his high school days. Neil Brown said, quote, "The way he competes is special. His leadership capabilities are special, and seeing his progression over the last 3 years at quarterback is fun to watch, and just seeing how much upside he has." Then, though, with his recruitment, things got funny. He played so well in the Elite 11 that he ended up making it all the way to the finals, yet all these recruiters didn't want him. But all of a sudden, Florida State finally came calling. At the time, Willie Taggart was the head coach at Florida State, but after he was fired, Jeff Sims decided to flip to Jeff Collins in Georgia Tech, so then Florida State needed a new quarterback. With newly hired head coach Mike Norvell trying to get a good recruiting haul for the 2020 team, he decided to put Greene on his recruiting radar at the last minute. But Greene would tell Florida State up front that he was loyal to West Virginia and that no school could flip him. He said, quote, "FSU had 3 years to offer me and never pulled the trigger. That kind of made me mad." From there, he was all set and had a record-breaking career at Lawton Chiles. In total, he accounted for nearly 3,000 passing yards and 2,500 rushing yards and 56 combined touchdowns. While he was good, he still was not an elite quarterback by any means, and he was considered a 3-star recruit, combined with his lack of height. According to 24/7 Sports, Greene was a 3-star recruit, the number 21 dual-threat quarterback, and the 570th best player in the class of 2020. So, how would he end up doing in Morgantown? Well, when he arrived, he would battle it out with both Austin Kendall and Jarrett Doege for the starting job. Kendall was once a blue-chip recruit from Oklahoma, and Doege was a journeyman quarterback from Bowling Green. Coach Neil Brown said, quote, "I'll say this, I'm fired up about Garrett Greene. I like the way he plays, and I like the way he carries himself. Could he be a factor if he continues to grow? Yes. As far as who's going to start the opener, it's a 2-man race though." So yeah, he was not going to end up playing at all as a freshman, but many would say don't count on him remaining in that spot for too long. As I said, college stardom did not come overnight for Garrett Greene, as because of everything going on in the world in 2020, it was a really weird season, and that also would provide a ton of obstacles. In total during the 2020 season, he appeared in 2 games, completing 3 of 4 passes for 24 yards. In 2021, things would get a little bit better for him, as he would end up appearing in a couple of games, pretty much always as a backup. He ended up completing 16 of 26 passes for 147 yards, but he did have 300 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, proving that he was a true dual threat. Going into the 2022 season, it was going to be interesting for him. He could have entered the portal, but he decided to stay and compete for the job, and while he lost to JT Daniels, he would get his opportunity later on in the season. After Daniels ended up getting hurt, he would come in against Oklahoma and would score 3 touchdowns and a win. He had 138 yards and a touchdown, and then over 100 yards and 2 rushing scores, and this was a monumental moment for him. After that, Greene then had 4 touchdowns and a loss to Kansas State, and then had a touchdown and a win on the road against Oklahoma State. In total in 2022, Greene would throw for 493 yards with 5 touchdowns and 3 picks, and 5 more scores on the ground. Despite having a strong finish to the 2022 season, no one was really talking about Garrett Greene. Everybody thought Neil Brown was on the hot seat, and everyone could not wait for Nico Marchiol to get in the game. Especially a guy like me. I thought Marchiol was going to be the future of the program, and that there was no point in wasting time on a player like Greene. I know it's a little bit harsh, but everyone has their opinions in college football, and I just didn't think Greene was that great. The first month of the season didn't really do that much to make me feel better about Greene, as while he did have 4 touchdowns and a win over Duquesne, he struggled in a loss to Penn State, got hurt against Pitt, and then really struggled against TCU. West Virginia was 3-1 during that stretch, but as we all found out, he also had an ankle injury, would miss the Texas Tech game, and then would eventually find his footing and have a tremendous season. He first got going in a loss to Oklahoma State, as he had nearly 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns in a loss to the Cowboys, and then he helped them go off. He helped them beat UCF on the road with 3 touchdowns. He helped them beat UCF on the road, had 2 more scores in a blowout victory over BYU, and then had 4 touchdowns and a win over Cincinnati and 4 touchdowns and a win over Baylor. Sandwiched between those 4 teams was a loss to Oklahoma, but Garrett Greene finished the year strong and would help them get to a bowl game. They would play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against North Carolina, and in that game, he'd throw for 228 yards and a touchdown. In total in 2023, Garrett Greene passed for 2,500 yards with 16 touchdowns and 4 picks, and also had 772 yards and 13 scores on the ground. Honestly, this guy, in my opinion, is going under the radar. Not only does he not turn over the ball, but he threw for a lot of yards, has that grit and that it factor to him, and he can score with his legs. This is something that the West Virginia offense has been missing for quite some time, and in a lot of ways, he reminds me of Skylar Howard, just even more athletic. The best part about Greene is that he can do pretty much everything. The biggest knock on him is going to be his height and his completion percentage, as his percentage was near the bottom of the Big 12, but apparently he's been working with a trainer to get even better at that. In my opinion, Garrett Greene is someone to watch out for in 2024. West Virginia, in my opinion, is a dark horse team to finish at the top of the Big 12 and could have a breakout season. It's kind of now or never for Neil Brown, and with an experienced quarterback like Greene at the helm, he's more confident, is getting more accurate, and already proved that he can pass, throw the ball, and win games, so in my opinion, the sky is going to be the limit for him. Will he even sniff the NFL? Probably not, but again, I was wrong about him before, so maybe he puts up some sort of monumental monster season and plays his way into being a day 3 draft pick. Again, I don't really know, maybe he also could switch positions in the league, but for now, Garrett Greene is a great story. He went from a guy who was doubted and never really wanted by the big-time programs, was written off at his own school, and now is the guy that West Virginia fans cannot wait to watch, and I was also wrong and cannot wait to watch him this upcoming fall. But what do you guys think? If you're a West Virginia fan, what do you think of Garrett Greene? What quarterback should I take a look at in my next video? And before you go, don't forget to let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what topic I should do next. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about Lenora Sellers. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.